In March 2026, the security lines at Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport backed up for nearly 4 hours. Only 2 of the 8 checkpoints were operating, leaving thousands of travelers stranded. The Department of Homeland Security scrambled to fix the bottleneck by pulling immigration and customs enforcement agents off their regular duties. They sent them to the airports in full tactical gear to assist the TSA, despite having no training in airport security screening. This chaos was happening because the United States government was in the middle of its longest shutdown in history. To break the deadlock, the Senate prepared to deploy a highly controversial parliamentary weapon. If you want to understand how Washington actually works behind the scenes, make sure to hit subscribe. The physical breakdown at America's airports was the direct symptom of an immovable procedural jam happening 1,200 miles away on the Senate floor. The jam started in late January 2026, after Customs and Border Protection agents shot and killed a U.S. citizen named Alex Pretti. The incident ignited a political firestorm that immediately halted the normal legislative process. Senate Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, pulled their support for the Department of Homeland Security's funding bill. They issued a 10-point list of demands for federal agents, including mandatory body cameras, the use of judicial warrants, and a total ban on wearing face masks. This diagram shows the arithmetic of the gridlock. Republicans refused those demands, but they only held 53 seats. Under normal Senate rules, they needed 60 votes to break a filibuster and pass the funding. Because they fell short of those 60 votes, Homeland Security funding expired. This triggered a 70-day partial shutdown that halted paychecks for TSA workers and suspended all non-disaster responses from FEMA. When the standard legislative process jams this thoroughly, the majority party is forced to search for a backdoor mechanism. They found their bypass in a procedure known as budget reconciliation. Looking back at our Senate map, budget reconciliation completely overrides the filibuster. It drops the requirement to pass a bill from 60 down to a simple majority of 51 votes, giving a 53-seat bloc a clear path to victory. Congress created this tool in the 1974 Budget Act for a specific reason. It was designed as an internal mechanism to align federal spending targets and help balance the budget. To prevent the majority from using this to pass any law they want with 51 votes, the Senate relies on a major constraint called the Byrd Rule, named after Senator Robert Byrd. The Byrd Rule enforces strict requirements. Any legislation passed through reconciliation must directly alter federal spending or revenue, and it cannot add to the federal deficit beyond a 10-year window. The rule forces every policy proposal to be translated into a line-item cost or a revenue projection. If the math doesn't work within that 10-year frame, the Senate parliamentarian can strike the provision entirely. In April 2026, Republicans operationalized this strategy. They packaged $70 billion in funding specifically for ICE and the Border Patrol, structuring it as a 3-year budget reconciliation bill. By classifying the funding purely as a budgetary measure, the majority could legally ignore the Democrats' 10-point list of guardrails and move the money forward on a party line vote. Using reconciliation automatically triggers an event known as a vote-a-rama. The rules limit the time for debate, but they put no limit on the number of amendments. This locks the Senate into a mandatory, exhausting marathon of back-to-back voting. During that marathon session, the floor turned into tactical warfare. Senator Schumer forced his opponents to take difficult votes on healthcare costs, while Republican Senator John Kennedy threatened to stall the proceedings for hours over his own rejected amendments. A vote-a-rama is an arena for legislative combat. It is designed to exhaust the opposition and test political messaging before the final tally. Despite the grueling hours and the endless amendments, the math held up. The $70 billion ICE funding plan successfully advanced with a simple majority of 51 votes. This maneuver brought the 70-day shutdown closer to its end, but the ideological conflict over border enforcement remains unresolved. Zooming out, this vertical timeline shows how budget reconciliation has mutated over the decades. What started as a dry accounting tool in 1974 has evolved into one of Washington's most potent legislative weapons. In the early 2000s, it bypassed the filibuster for massive tax overhauls, cementing the Bush tax cuts. By 2010, lawmakers weaponized it for healthcare, pushing financial adjustments to the Affordable Care Act without needing 60 votes. The timeline accelerates from there, moving from the stimulus of 2021 straight through to the ICE funding bill in 2026. The uses are becoming more frequent, and the scale of the legislation is increasing. The 60-vote filibuster still exists on paper, but reconciliation has become the default vehicle for the most partisan priorities. In a polarized Senate, controlling the floor now depends as much on massed on the parliamentary manual as it does on winning the election.